The crowded lobby of the National Telecom Investment Forum in Phoenix buzzed with wealthy investors seeking opportunities. My name is Audrey, a 28-year-old woman standing quietly in the corner, observing the chaotic room. Before I could gather my thoughts completely, my estranged family suddenly appeared right in front of me. "Did you come here by accident? Or were you trying to find me?" "Useless, stupid." My older sister sneered loudly enough for nearby attendees to hear. My mother quickly joined the cruel mockery by looking me up and down with absolute disgust in her eyes. "Looks like she's a waitress," my mother muttered while tilting her head away, as if my presence offended her. Finally, my father glared at me with a cold intensity that used to make me tremble in fear. "Don't let anyone know you're my failure," my father warned through gritted teeth before adjusting his expensive suit jacket. They immediately assumed I was begging for scraps at an event far above my supposed social class. I maintained absolute silence without offering a single word of defense or explanation for my presence there. Their arrogant footsteps echoed against the marble floor while they disappeared into the grand conference hall. Watching them walk away with their heads held high filled me with a cold sense of anticipation. They were entirely unprepared for the financial shock I was about to deliver on the main stage tonight. If you are eager to see how this ultimate family betrayal unfolds, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. 4 years ago, my life was ruthlessly shattered by my own flesh and blood inside the familiar walls of our private family office building. I marched into the spacious room with purposeful strides before slamming my personal laptop onto the heavy oak desk right in front of them to expose the ultimate betrayal. My hands trembled slightly with suppressed anger while I pointed directly at the document edit history, alongside the undeniable metadata displayed clearly on the bright screen. The complex digital footprint proved beyond any reasonable doubt that Mallory had deliberately stolen my comprehensive telecom infrastructure plan before simply replacing my authorship with her own name. I demanded a logical explanation for this blatant intellectual theft, while genuinely expecting my parents to hold her completely accountable for her deeply deceitful actions. The quiet atmosphere grew incredibly tense as the glaring evidence of her corporate plagiarism illuminated the dark mahogany furniture. Instead of confessing to her undeniable guilt, Mallory immediately burst into theatrical tears to play the pathetic role of a falsely accused victim facing a cruel sabotage attempt. She buried her face in her manicured hands while sobbing loudly about how I was constantly trying to undermine her hard work alongside her dedication to the growing company. Mom rushed to her side without a single second of hesitation to pull her favorite child into a fiercely protective embrace. Glaring at me with absolute contempt, Mom launched into a vicious verbal attack that completely ignored the undeniable technical proof shining brightly on the computer monitor. She viciously accused me of being bitterly jealous of the perfect daughter, while claiming I deliberately forged the complex digital evidence to destroy the bright future Mallory rightfully deserved. The sheer absurdity of her blind favoritism left me momentarily speechless as she continued to comfort the actual thief standing right there. Summoning every ounce of my remaining courage, I raised my voice over their dramatic, comforting routine to force them to look at the objective facts. Look at the creation time of this file because it was saved on my computer 2 months before Mallory even knew this project existed. I shouted while desperately tapping the laptop screen to highlight the irrefutable chronological timestamp. Dad remained completely silent during my desperate plea before finally stepping forward with a stern expression devoid of any parental warmth or basic sense of justice. He completely disregarded the obvious technological truth because acknowledging my superior intellect would ultimately ruin the carefully crafted corporate narrative he wanted to present to the wealthy investors tomorrow morning. In business, people only need a perfect representative face, and you will never be that person. Dad stated with a chilling calmness that instantly froze the blood flowing through my veins. Following that devastating verbal declaration, he immediately picked up his desk phone to order the technical department to permanently revoke my administrative access across the entire company network. He explicitly instructed the security team to freeze my corporate accounts while locking me out of every single database I had personally helped construct over the past several years. Without showing a single shred of parental remorse, he forcefully ordered me to pack whatever basic clothing I could physically carry in order to leave his property immediately. He strictly forbade me from taking any financial resources or printed corporate documents to ensure I possessed absolutely no leverage to legally fight back against their coordinated intellectual theft. I was mercilessly shoved out into the freezing winter night with nothing but the thin coat on my back, while realizing that the people I once trusted were truly dead to me forever from that exact moment. 6 months after that freezing winter night, I had reached the absolute bottom of physical exhaustion while working grueling night shifts at a local diner just to survive the harsh reality of my new life. I rented a dilapidated room on the outskirts of the city where the outdated heating system barely functioned during the coldest mornings. Instead of resting my aching body during my strictly limited free hours, I practically lived at the local public library to fully utilize their quiet environment alongside their free educational resources. Sitting at those worn wooden tables, I painstakingly redrew complex telecommunications transmission models purely from my own memory to keep my technical skills perfectly sharp despite my current extreme poverty. My relentless daily dedication finally yielded a genuine glimmer of hope when an unexpected email arrived from a prominent Wall Street investment firm regarding a corporate position I applied for weeks ago. The elite recruitment department explicitly requested that I complete an advanced online competency test within a strict 48-hour window to conclusively prove my analytical capabilities. A massive technological obstacle immediately presented itself because I possessed absolutely no personal computer or reliable internet connection to securely access their highly demanding corporate testing platform. Desperation quickly began to set in until my best friend Chloe unexpectedly appeared at my workplace during the middle of my incredibly chaotic evening shift. Chloe previously worked as a senior data analyst at a major financial institution, so she completely understood the intense psychological pressure surrounding these exclusive corporate evaluations. She carried a heavy canvas bag containing her personal old laptop, alongside a neatly pressed corporate suit, meant to help me project a perfectly professional image during any future in-person interviews. She ordered a simple cup of coffee before gesturing for me to sit opposite her inside the cramped diner booth during my briefly designated break time. Carefully opening the worn computer, she thoroughly explained the specific technical challenges I was inevitably about to face within the simulation software. She explicitly warned me about the extreme difficulty of the optical transmission risk simulation section that routinely eliminates the vast majority of standard applicants. Her rapid but precise breakdown of the overall exam structure helped me immediately grasp the core focus required to successfully navigate the deliberately tricky financial scenarios. This test focuses heavily on bandwidth risks, so you only have exactly 45 minutes to complete everything without letting my old computer slow down your rhythm, Chloe advised with genuine concern written across her face. I have completely memorized those algorithms already, so as long as this machine does not suddenly crash, I will definitely pass the assessment. I replied confidently while staring determinedly at the glowing computer monitor. Taking a deep breath, I initiated the secure online portal right there in the diner corner, while my sympathetic shift manager graciously allowed me an unusually extended break. The aging laptop hardware immediately began to aggressively struggle under the heavy processing demands of the complex telecommunication simulation software required by the investment firm. The screen constantly froze during crucial data inputs, which practically forced me to manually calculate massive optical parameters on scattered pieces of diner scratch paper. I furiously scribbled complicated mathematical formulas across the napkins, while keeping a frantic eye on the strict countdown timer ticking mercilessly away in the upper right corner of the display. The immense psychological pressure weighed heavily on my shoulders, but my thorough library preparation allowed me to successfully bypass the severe hardware limitations through pure mental calculation speed. I confidently submitted the final bandwidth risk analysis with mere seconds remaining on the digital clock, while feeling a massive wave of relief completely wash over my tired body. Exactly 2 years after being mercilessly thrown out of my childhood home, I officially stepped into a decisive interview with the absolute elite of Wall Street. The massive glass building felt incredibly intimidating, but I refused to let my inner anxiety show while purposefully walking toward the prestigious executive floor. I sat directly opposite my prospective boss, Mr. Simon, who carefully flipped through my severely lacking official employment resume with profound professional skepticism. My entire application consisted merely of my exceptional online test scores, without any prestigious university degrees or wealthy family connections to confidently back up my technical claims. He clearly questioned my highly unconventional background compared to the traditionally educated candidates typically applying for such crucial analytical positions within his influential financial firm. You do not possess a relevant master's degree, so why should I actually believe you can successfully solve the bandwidth problem that my entire team of expensive experts is currently stuck on? Simon challenged while slowly leaning back in his heavy leather chair. He deliberately threw a massive real-world scenario across the wide desk involving a failing interstate fiber optic project currently facing millions of dollars in potential losses due to severe signal degradation. The complicated telecommunications case study represented a massive financial trap that had already confused several senior executives within his investment department over the past few difficult months. Instead of verbally explaining my theoretical approach, I confidently stood up from my comfortable seat before picking up a black marker resting near his massive glass whiteboard. I quickly mapped out the complicated network infrastructure while immediately pinpointing the critical financial error regarding their fundamentally flawed optical splice node allocation across the Western region. Because they are focusing heavily on simply increasing the initial transmitter power, while the real technical problem actually lies in the fundamentally incorrect coordinate design of the intermediate signal amplifiers. I explained confidently. My hand moved rapidly across the smooth, transparent surface while drawing the optimal routing diagram to effectively salvage the entire dying project without requiring the firm to purchase any additional expensive hardware. Simon watched my rapid mathematical calculations intently as the deep skepticism in his sharp eyes slowly transformed into genuine professional recognition regarding my undeniable industry knowledge. He remained completely silent for several tense moments while carefully reviewing my newly drawn network architecture before abruptly tossing his expensive pen onto the wooden desk. He officially offered me a probationary data analyst position right on the spot, without requiring any further useless theoretical discussions about my academic background. That specific moment marked the ultimate turning point in my completely derailed professional life, because I finally possessed the necessary corporate platform to prove my true intellectual value to the ruthless business world. Over the next few incredibly productive years, I successfully navigated numerous massive telecommunication projects while consistently saving our investment fund from signing several highly risky infrastructure contracts. I spent countless late nights deeply analyzing complex regional datasets to ensure our firm never invested capital into fundamentally flawed technological expansions lacking proper architectural foundations. During one major corporate acquisition, I personally identified a hidden debt structure within a failing broadband company that successfully prevented our fund from losing over $50 million. My undeniable technical expertise allowed me to climb the strict corporate ladder rapidly from a probationary junior analyst to a respected senior specialist within record time. My relentless daily dedication, alongside my flawlessly accurate risk predictions, eventually earned me the highly coveted executive title of Chief Advisor, directly working under Simon. Reaching this powerful executive level granted me absolute authority over major financial decisions, while permanently cementing my independent professional reputation within the fiercely competitive Wall Street environment. 3 weeks before the highly anticipated Telecommunications Investment Forum in Phoenix, a seemingly familiar corporate fundraising portfolio was placed neatly upon my polished desk. Flipping open the thick leather cover, I immediately recognized the distinct blue corporate logo belonging to Dad, printed boldly across the title page. The glossy executive summary contained a completely fraudulent network expansion proposal, proudly listing Mallory as the primary project director, despite her complete lack of engineering expertise. Seeing her name prominently displayed on documents she never actually possessed the intellectual capacity to write simply fueled my determination to completely dismantle their deceptive scheme. Instead of immediately rushing out to expose this blatant corporate deception, I decided to quietly utilize my high-level security clearance to access various federal public data systems. Running their company identification numbers through the official government database allowed me to thoroughly cross-check their submitted portfolio against their legally binding federal tax records. Digging deeply into their supposedly audited annual reports quickly revealed a massive financial discrepancy hidden deliberately behind their beautifully crafted presentation slides. The grandiose revenue numbers they aggressively advertised to potential investors completely contradicted the harsh reality of their severely depleted operational cash flow. Their official banking statements submitted to the government clearly proved their internal capital reserves were essentially non-existent due to severe corporate mismanagement. I spent several hours meticulously comparing their projected profit margins against the actual state revenue filings they were legally obligated to submit every single quarter. Scanning carefully through the attached vendor invoices, I eventually uncovered specific, undeniable evidence regarding their current crippling financial obligations to multiple major hardware suppliers. The hidden accounting records explicitly proved they currently owed exactly $4.7 million for unsold fiber optic inventory accumulating dust inside their main facility. Furthermore, those exact same records detailed several consecutive months of unpaid warehouse storage fees, accumulating massive penalty charges from their primary logistics partners. The sheer audacity of presenting such a bankrupt operation as a highly profitable investment opportunity truly highlighted their desperate desire to secure immediate external funding. Gathering these highly incriminating documents together, I carefully compiled a comprehensive corporate violation dossier to guarantee their fraudulent activities could never be legally denied. Walking directly into the corner executive office, I placed the thick folder firmly onto the desk right in front of Simon for his immediate review. I officially requested his permission to act as the primary fund representative evaluating this specific telecommunications project during the upcoming financial summit in Arizona. This report heavily paints huge profits, but public tax data clearly shows they are carrying a completely unpayable equipment inventory debt. I explained while tapping the highlighted federal forms. Simon remained completely silent for several tense moments while carefully reviewing the highlighted financial discrepancies before looking up with a deeply serious expression. Clarify all the numbers thoroughly because I want to know exactly what kind of financial garbage our fund is currently facing. Simon instructed with a strictly professional tone. Following his direct executive orders, I dedicated the entire following week to meticulously verifying every single fraudulent claim contained within their fabricated business proposal. I cross-referenced their projected expansion maps against actual municipal construction permits to prove they possessed absolutely no legal authority to build those proposed optical lines. Every single layer of their elaborate corporate presentation unraveled into a pathetic series of desperate lies meant to steal millions from unsuspecting venture capitalists. I securely packed the undeniable legal evidence into my encrypted digital briefcase while finalizing my professional travel arrangements for the upcoming corporate event hosted at the National Convention Center. Boarding the morning flight to Phoenix felt incredibly empowering, knowing I finally possessed the exact tools needed to legally dismantle their entire corrupt empire. The sudden flash of cameras alongside the roaring applause inside the massive convention hall forcefully pulled my mind back to the harsh reality of tonight. The professional event moderator stepped up to the glowing podium to loudly announce the primary financial decision-makers for this highly anticipated evening session. Please welcome Simon alongside his chief advisor from the investment fund, who will ultimately determine the primary capital allocations tonight, the moderator declared enthusiastically. Hearing my official title broadcasted across the entire room, I confidently walked forward to claim my designated chair placed directly beside Simon in the exclusive front row. Sitting in that velvet chair granted me complete visual control over the entire situation, while allowing me to closely observe the subtle reactions of every wealthy attendee. Mallory confidently stepped onto the brightly lit stage wearing an incredibly expensive designer suit meant to project an absolute aura of corporate dominance. She stood behind the microphone with a perfectly practiced smile, while a massive projection screen behind her illuminated the dark room with brightly colored graphs. She enthusiastically began presenting their supposedly revolutionary telecommunication infrastructure expansion plan, using slides that were heavily embellished with completely unrealistic profit margins. Dad alongside Mom sat a few rows behind me, nodding proudly at their chosen representative without realizing the massive financial trap closing rapidly around them. Mallory actively paced across the wide stage while mechanically spouting complex engineering terminology she clearly did not possess the intellectual capacity to actually comprehend. She aggressively threw around advanced optical transmission concepts while essentially just reciting a carefully rehearsed script written entirely by her desperate technical staff. Her completely artificial confidence masked a profound ignorance regarding the actual physical implementation of the massive digital networks she was aggressively trying to sell. Pausing dramatically, she attempted to explain a highly complex routing protocol, but her rehearsed memory clearly faltered under the intense pressure of the silent room. Our new telecommunication system will effectively optimize the, radio frequency bands to significantly reduce operational costs down to the absolute minimum, Mallory stated with sudden hesitation. Her awkward verbal stumble caused several experienced engineers in the crowd to shift uncomfortably in their seats, because her technical explanation made absolutely no logical sense. I simply sat there with a completely neutral expression while quietly cross-referencing her ridiculous verbal claims against the devastating legal evidence stored safely on my encrypted tablet. She managed to recover her composure quickly enough to finish the final segment of her deceptive corporate presentation with another falsely enthusiastic concluding statement. The heavy silence in the room was eventually broken by polite applause from the unsuspecting investors, who remained completely ignorant of the underlying financial fraud. Mallory looked down at the wealthy audience with a triumphant expression, while clearly expecting to see a room full of eager venture capitalists ready to hand over their money. Her arrogant gaze swept across the crowded rows before suddenly stopping dead when her eyes finally landed on the VIP section directly in front of the stage. Recognizing my face sitting immediately next to the most powerful investor in the entire building caused the triumphant smile on her perfectly made-up face to instantly freeze. The sheer panic radiating from her widening eyes proved she suddenly realized her carefully constructed corporate illusion was about to be completely shattered. She stood completely paralyzed behind the wooden podium while staring down at the very same person she had mercilessly thrown out into the freezing winter night 4 years ago. I did not break eye contact or offer any reassuring gestures, while she nervously gripped the edges of the wooden stand to steady her visibly trembling hands. The devastating reality of my undeniable authority in this room finally crushed her fake confidence into millions of irreparable pieces right before the upcoming interrogation. Right after the live question and answer session officially commenced, the entire convention hall unexpectedly sank into an incredibly tense silence. I deliberately stood up from my comfortable velvet chair before pressing the small button to activate the microphone placed firmly on my VIP table. Looking directly toward the brightly lit stage, I clearly reintroduced my official corporate title as Chief Advisor for the largest investment fund present tonight. Hearing my authoritative voice echo through the massive room caused Dad, alongside Mom sitting in the rows behind me, to instantly freeze in utter shock. They finally realized their discarded daughter now wielded the absolute financial power to single-handedly determine the ultimate fate of their desperate company. Focusing my attention entirely on the podium, I immediately launched a highly technical question regarding the fundamental flaws in their proposed optical network design. I aggressively demanded that Mallory explicitly explain her specific mitigation strategy for the severe signal degradation occurring across those long-distance fiber cables she just presented. The complex engineering vocabulary trapped her completely because she essentially memorized the presentation slides without understanding any underlying scientific principles. How exactly do you justify demanding investor capital to deploy new transmission stations while your company currently owes $7 million for unsold core network equipment? I challenged loudly while projecting the undeniable federal tax documents directly onto the massive screen behind her. Mallory gripped the wooden edges of the podium so tightly her knuckles turned completely white, while desperately searching her empty mind for a coherent technical response. We implement dynamic routing protocols to compensate for that specific equipment degradation, Mallory stammered while mistakenly combining completely unrelated networking concepts together. Her fundamentally incorrect explanation caused several experienced industry experts sitting throughout the audience to immediately frown in visible professional disapproval. She essentially proved to every wealthy investor in the room that she possessed absolutely no genuine knowledge regarding the critical infrastructure she was attempting to build. I refused to grant her any opportunity to verbally correct her massive mistake or pivot back to her comfortable marketing script. Tapping my encrypted tablet again, I officially displayed the undeniable government records detailing their massive unpaid warehouse storage fees alongside their crippling vendor debts. The undeniable visual proof of their severe financial mismanagement instantly destroyed the beautiful corporate illusion they spent months carefully constructing. Simon slowly reached over to take the microphone from my hand before standing up to address the increasingly agitated crowd of venture capitalists. He spoke with absolute corporate authority while officially declaring that our premier investment fund was immediately withdrawing all interest from this highly fraudulent project. His devastating public announcement created an immediate domino effect throughout the entire convention hall because smaller investors heavily relied upon his expert financial judgment. Representatives from other major corporate funds immediately began crossing the company name off their evaluation lists while quietly murmuring among themselves about the blatant deception. Mallory remained completely frozen on the stage while watching hundreds of millions of dollars in potential funding evaporate into nothingness right before her eyes. The profound humiliation washing over my former family felt incredibly definitive because I systematically dismantled their entire fraudulent empire using only undeniable legal facts. Approximately 2 hours after the massive crowd completely dispersed from the convention hall, the luxurious hotel corridor became incredibly quiet enough to hear every single heavy breath. Dad aggressively stormed toward my position with a fiercely red face, while loudly condemning me as a miserable traitor who maliciously destroyed his lifelong family legacy. He wildly gestured toward the completely empty auditorium while viciously blaming my public technical interrogation for permanently ruining their absolute last chance at securing immediate corporate salvation from the investors. I calmly looked directly into his furious eyes while explicitly stating that their own documented legal fraud, alongside the profound professional incompetence of Mallory, ultimately ruined their struggling company beyond any hope of repair. Realizing his aggressive intimidation tactics were completely ineffective, Dad suddenly changed his hostile demeanor by desperately begging me to speak with Simon to miraculously save their dying business. He pathetically attempted to use our shared biological connection to manipulate my emotions into granting them financial mercy, while conveniently ignoring how ruthlessly they threw me out into the freezing cold 4 years ago. Firmly refusing his hypocritical request, I immediately turned my back to walk straight through the revolving glass doors, while leaving them drowning completely in their own absolute panic, without looking back, even once. Exactly 2 months following that definitive convention confrontation, their corrupt telecommunications company officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, while the federal tax authorities initiated a comprehensive fraud investigation into their operations. Dad eventually faced severe federal legal penalties regarding his deliberate financial deception, causing massive public humiliation across the entire national industry network, while permanently ruining his professional reputation forever. Mom, alongside Mallory, tragically lost their luxurious estate because the primary regional bank permanently foreclosed on their massive unpaid mortgage, leaving them completely destitute without any corporate protection or wealthy friends to help them recover from the massive financial disaster they created. This official channel production serves strictly as an educational narrative designed to convey critical messages regarding personal boundaries within toxic environments. The story powerfully demonstrates how individuals must consistently utilize strict logic alongside established legal frameworks to successfully overcome severe personal crises without compromising their integrity. Objectively evaluating the situation reveals how the protagonist decisively protected her mental well-being by permanently severing all ties with highly abusive relatives. The antagonists ultimately suffered the completely inevitable financial consequences directly resulting from their own fraudulent business decisions. Their devastating corporate downfall was entirely self-inflicted rather than being caused by any malicious external vengeance. This challenging journey from absolute rock bottom toward ultimate professional triumph provides several incredibly profound life lessons for everyone to carefully consider applying to their own situations. Genuine professional competence alongside true intellectual capability represent the absolute only permanent assets that malicious individuals can never steal from you, regardless of their deceptive corporate tactics. Blindly sacrificing your own fundamental self-respect to desperately maintain a highly toxic family dynamic will inevitably drag you much deeper into a miserable cycle of continuous emotional abuse. Choosing to completely walk away from severely abusive biological relatives is never an act of cruel betrayal, but rather a completely necessary survival strategy to permanently protect your own future success. We sincerely thank our dedicated viewers who patiently listened to this compelling story until the very end. We truly appreciate your continued support, alongside your active engagement with our daily educational content. How would you personally handle this exact situation if your own family committed such massive betrayal? Please leave your honest thoughts in the comments section below to share your unique perspective before we see you next time.